Part 1 Story, The Rules of Blackwood Peak. I have always been a loner. That is probably why the job listing appealed to me in the first place. It was short, vague, and offered an obscene amount of money for very little work. Fire lookout. Blackwood National Forest. 6-month contract. No internet. No cell service. Just you, a radio, and miles of ancient pine trees. I needed the cash. My student loans were drowning me, and the rent in the city had just gone up again. So, I packed my bag, sold my car, and took the bus 3 states over to a town that barely appeared on the map. A ranger named Holloway met me at the base of the mountain. He was a man made of leather and gristle, with eyes that looked like they had stared into the sun for too long. He didn't say much as he drove me up the fire road in his battered Jeep. He just chewed on a toothpick and watched the trees blur past. When we reached the trailhead, he handed me a heavy key ring and a backpack of supplies. "It is a 3-mile hike up to the tower," Holloway grunted. "I would drive you, but the Jeep won't make the incline. Once you are up there, radio in. Channel 1 is for emergencies. Channel 2 is for daily check-ins at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. I took the keys. "Any advice?" I asked, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Holloway paused. He looked up at the peak, shrouded in mist. "Just read the manual. It is on the desk. Read it twice before you unpack." "And kid?" "Yeah. Don't feed the wildlife. None of it." With that, he got back in his Jeep and rattled away down the mountain, leaving me standing in the silence of the forest. The hike was brutal. By the time I reached the tower, my legs were burning. The structure itself was impressive, a 60-foot steel skeleton rising out of the granite, topped with a square cabin wrapped in windows. It looked like a lonely eye watching the world. I climbed the metal stairs, the wind whistling through the grating beneath my boots. I unlocked the trapdoor, pushed it open, and hauled myself into my new home. It was cozy enough. A cot in one corner, a propane stove, a desk with a radio, and a 360-degree view of the green ocean below. The sun was just starting to set, painting the sky in bruises of purple and orange. I sat my bag down and saw the manual Holloway had mentioned. It was a thick, black binder sitting dead center on the desk. I sat down and opened it. The first few pages were standard stuff. How to operate the propane tank. How to spot smoke. How to triangulate coordinates. Boring. Then I turned to the last page. It was a single sheet of yellowed paper, distinct from the rest. The header read, "Special Instructions for Tower 4. I leaned in, squinting in the fading light. Rule 1, keep the trapdoor locked at all times between sunset and sunrise. Even if you hear someone calling for help from the bottom of the stairs. Especially if it sounds like Ranger Holloway. Rule 2, do not look at the moon if it appears red. Pull the blinds and wait until morning. Rule 3, you may hear scratching on the windows. This is normal. It is just the birds. Do not investigate, even if the scratching sounds like fingernails. Rule 4, if the radio turns on by itself and emits static, turn it off immediately. If a voice speaks through the static, do not answer. It is trying to get a lock on your location. Rule 5, there is no basement in the tower. If you open the supply closet and see a staircase going down, close the door, lock it, and put a chair in front of it. Do not open it again for 24 hours. Rule 6, if you see a light in the woods that blinks 3 times, blink your lantern back 3 times. If it blinks 4 times, turn off your lantern and lie flat on the floor. Do not move until the sun comes up." I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. It had to be a joke. A hazing ritual for the new guy. Holloway and the other rangers probably sat around the station betting on how long it would take for the city kid to call in a panic. I tossed the binder aside and started unpacking. I set up my sleeping bag, heated up some beans on the stove, and watched the sun disappear behind the horizon. Night falls heavy in the forest. It is not just dark, it is a physical weight. The silence is so absolute that you can hear the blood rushing in your ears. At 7:55 p.m., I sat down at the radio to do my first check-in. I flipped the switch to channel 2. Tower 4 to base, come in. Static hissed back at me. Then, a click. Base here. You settled in, Elias? It was Holloway's voice. Yeah, I am all good, I said. Hey, I read the manual. Nice joke with the rules. You guys almost got me. There was a long pause on the other end. The static swelled and receded like ocean waves. What rules? Holloway asked. His voice was flat. Serious. The list in the back of the binder, I said. The stuff about the red moon and the basement. Another pause. Longer this time. Elias, Holloway said, his voice dropping an octave. There is no list in the binder. We removed that page 5 years ago after the incident with the last lookout. A chill ran down my neck, cold and sharp. Stop it, I said. You are trying to scare me. Burn that page, Elias, Holloway ordered. Do not read it again. And for God's sake, lock the trapdoor. Base out. The radio clicked off. I sat there for a moment, staring at the black plastic box. He was good. I had to give him that. He was committed to the bit. I stood up and walked over to the trapdoor in the floor. I looked down through the grate. The metal stairs spiraled down into the darkness, disappearing into the void of the forest floor. I reached down and threw the deadbolt. Click thud. Just to be safe, I told myself. I spent the next few hours reading a book by lantern light. The wind picked up outside, rattling the windows in their frames. Every now and then, I would look up, expecting to see a face pressed against the glass, but there was only the reflection of my own anxious eyes. Around 11 p.m., I decided to turn in. I killed the lantern and crawled into my sleeping bag. The darkness was absolute. I lay there, listening to the wind. Scritch. 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 My eyes snapped open. The sound came from the window directly above my head. It was soft, rhythmic. Like something testing the glass. Scritch. Scritch. Rule 3, I thought. You may hear scratching on the windows. It is just the birds. But birds do not fly at night. And birds do not have a rhythm. I lay perfectly still, holding my breath. The scratching moved. It slid along the glass, moving from the north window to the east window. It was slow. Deliberate. Then, it stopped. I let out a shaky breath. It was just a branch, I told myself. The wind is blowing a branch against the tower. I rolled over, facing away from the windows, trying to force myself to sleep. Beep. The sound echoed through the small cabin. It was the radio. I froze. The radio was on the desk across the room. I had turned it off. I remembered turning it off. Beep. HSSSSSSSSS. Static began to pour from the speaker. It wasn't the white noise of an empty channel. It sounded wet. Thick. Like someone breathing through a lungful of water. I sat up slowly. The red power light on the radio was glowing in the dark like a singular, baleful eye. Rule 4, my brain screamed. If the radio turns on by itself, turn it off immediately. I scrambled out of my sleeping bag. The floor was freezing against my bare feet. I rushed to the desk, my hand hovering over the power knob. Through the wet static, a voice emerged. It was faint, whispery, and sounded like it was coming from a great distance. Elias. I snatched my hand back. Let me in, Elias. It is cold out here. The voice sounded like me. It was my own voice, but distorted, as if recorded on a warped tape. The trapdoor is locked, Elias. Why is it locked? I slammed my hand down on the power knob and twisted it. The click was loud in the silence. The red light died. The voice cut off instantly. I stood there in the dark, trembling. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it might crack them. That wasn't Holloway pulling a prank. He couldn't mimic my voice. He couldn't make the radio turn on by itself. I backed away, grabbing a heavy flashlight from the desk as a weapon. I stood in the center of the room, spinning in circles, checking the windows, the trapdoor, the closet, the radio. I was trapped in a glass box 60 feet in the air, and I wasn't alone. I waited for the sun. It felt like it took a year to arrive. But eventually, the sky turned gray, then blue. The birds started singing. I slumped to the floor, exhausted. The closet door was still closed. The chair was still wedged under the knob. The radio was silent. I needed to leave. I needed to hike down the mountain, find Holloway, and tell him I quit. I didn't care about the money. I stood up and walked to the windows to look out at the morning. I wanted to see the sun hitting the trees. I looked down at the ground below the tower. In the dirt, surrounding the base of the steel legs, were footprints. Hundreds of them. They were barefoot, human-shaped, but too long. They circled the tower over and over again. And then, I saw the handprints. They started at the base of the tower and went up the steel struts. Dirty, muddy handprints climbing 60 feet into the air. They stopped on the outside of the glass, right where I had been sleeping. I wasn't imagining the scratching. I went to the radio. I didn't care about the rules anymore. I needed help. I flipped it on and grabbed the mic. Tower 4 to base. Holloway, come in. This is an emergency. Silence. Then, static. Halloween, please. There was something here last night. The radio crackled wrong. It was too clear. Too close. Holloway, I'm coming down. I can't stay here. Negative, Elias, the voice said. The road is washed out. Storm last night. You are stuck up there for a few days. I looked out the window. The sky was clear. The ground was dry. There had been no storm. What are you talking about? I asked. It's sunny. It's dry. Look closer, Elias, the voice said. I leaned against the glass, looking down at the trail. Standing at the edge of the clearing, right where the tree line began, was a man. He was wearing a ranger's uniform. He was looking up at me. He was holding a radio to his mouth. But it wasn't Holloway. The man had no face. Just a smooth, pale patch of skin where his features should be. And as I watched, he raised a hand and waved. The radio on my desk crackled one last time. Rule 7, Elias, the faceless man's voice whispered through the speaker next to me. Do not let the man in the ranger uniform inside. He is not Holloway. End of part 1.